What should I know about Veritasium?
It was under the blood moon. I felt my heart come. I held you in this strange light, a place where shadows run. And as I kissed your glowing skin.
So basically, I'm looking to tie the entire world through Veritasium. So we're going to jump straight into the nitty-gritty with this video. The real property, real asset apocalypse is here. Now, of course, a lot of doom and gloom videos and pundits in the blogosphere and words such as apocalypse are used much more often than they should. To be absolutely honest, go only use the word apocalypse once to be accurate. But it's bad this time. So, instead of going through a preamble, jump straight into the numbers. First of all, let's take a look at the unemployment numbers. With real estate, with almost all real estate, okay, the unemployment numbers are the base driver. Okay, without employment, you don't have income. Without income, you can't support residential single family. You can't support multifamily rentals. You can't support the purchase of products and services, which also drags down industrial. It drags down office, it drags down retail and commercial, okay? The unemployment numbers are abysmal. Of course, what you see in pop media is that unemployment numbers are improving. Yes, they're improving from the worst they've ever been. And at this point, I think roughly 16, 17 weeks into the COVID lockdown, since March 23rd-ish, you see the unemployment claims, state by state, that are over 10 times what the worst was in the history of this country. So with this massive improvement, you're still 10 times worse than it's ever been. Now, it's one thing to put a bunch of pictures of boarded up buildings and businesses going out of operations. But if you get enough of that, you see enough of that, you get the message. But see, now we're going from the site of businesses being closed and shut down, and it's trickling down into the actual numbers, okay? The major mortgage derivative indices, the CMBS and RMBS, have had an over 1,000% spike in defaults. 1,000%. This is just since March. Take a look. Now, when you have a 1,000% increase in something and the worst is just starting, you have a problem. Okay? This is much, much worse than the 2007, 2008 crisis. We're actually, the equivalent of the Great Recession is about 2007 where we are now. Okay, going the next couple of quarters, we're going to spill into what will be the equivalent of 2008. But the difference is, this is going to last considerably longer. Okay, and it's going to be considerably deeper. The way the CMBX works, it stands for the Commercial Mortgage-Backed Security Index, is that it aggregates a bunch of commercial mortgages, and then it slices and dices them, creates tranches, and each tranche has a certain characteristic and a certain risk level. Okay, this graphic shows the CMBX 9. Okay, every few months or a couple of quarters, they add another CMBX slice onto the CMBX index, and that contains a different set of mortgages, etc. Take a look at the delinquencies for this particular CMBX 9. Now, let's take a look at the driving forces, the simple logic behind why you get a drop in the commercial-backed mortgage index. Well, office space and commercial retail space is a significant portion of these tranches, okay? This is a major subway line going from Brooklyn into New York City during rush hour. This is normally packed, elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, almost cheek to cheek, okay, with executives, with administrative staff, with support staff, with engineering, janitorial, everybody, okay? Rush hour. Nobody's dressed for work. Nobody's rushing to work. right? The theme of staying at home and working if you can, particularly on the white collar side, is lasting, even though many companies are opening up, theoretically. Who's going to work into the office space? Nobody, or very few. So if you don't have employees going in to occupy these very expensive office spaces, then these companies are going to stop paying leases, even if they can. Okay? On top of that, all of those employees supported the commercial space. They went out to lunch to eat, the restaurants, the fast food, they shopped, retail clothing, jewelry, etc. All of that is now non-existent in the blink of an eye. So this employment factor, or unemployment factor, has now seeped deeply into the numbers and is just starting, as said before. Take a look at 1 to 4 family residential. Take a look at single family homes. Take a look at everything, right? Delinquencies have increased, but the 1 to 4 family and the residential delinquencies are actually leading the charge, believe it or not. And there's a lot more to come. You see, much of the unemployment numbers have been cushioned by the PPP program and the unemployment insurance. Okay, the government has 2 choices. Okay, they can, with their fiscal stimulus, continue to print money and give it away, which devalues the dollar, or they cannot, which devalues the actual employees. You know, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. For the month of May, the 5 largest loan losses accounted for 78% of total CMBS loan losses. The largest of those losses is the Military Circle Mall in Norfolk, Virginia. It is a mall that has many large anchor tenants, but has lost quite a few of them in recent times. And it defaulted on a $52,300,000 loan. The loss given default, or absolute losses, amounted to 91.11%. So, to put in layman's terms, when you lend money for real estate, you take collateral. That collateral is often the real property in the buildings that real estate consists of. You take such collateral to make the loan safer. So oftentimes, loaning money is safe from a principal perspective, because if the person or the entity stops paying, you foreclose on a property, take it back, you keep it or sell it off. This particular lender lost 91.11% of the money lent. That is near total loss. Speaking of a near total loss, the second largest loss was $27,100,000 from that same group of CMBS loans. Okay, that's ABB Automatic. They have a 100% LGD, or loss given default. So the lender lost all of its money, despite collateral. Again, the LG portfolio was $26 million with over a 50% loss. Foothills Vista Tech Center, $8.9 million, 66% loss. And $8.7 million in Lenox Plaza with a 52% loss, just over 52%. Many wonder, hey, how can you lose so much money if it's collateralized by the real estate? It's the destructive power of leverage. So, speaking on the topic of leverage, take note that you use leverage. Let's say use 5-to-1 leverage, very similar to buying a house. You put 20% of your money down as a down payment. You borrow 80% to buy a house. So you purchase a house for $100,000. You put $20,000 down. You borrow $80,000 plus expenses, etc. But let's round it off to $80,000. You are in the house and you are using 5-to-1 leverage. Okay, that house goes down 20%. Okay, you have lost all of your equity. If the house goes down in value 20%, you've lost your $20,000 down payment, and you still have the mortgage of $80,000, and the house is only worth $80,000. Okay, now let's exacerbate these losses. Let's suppose you took a 100% loss, like in that diagram. Okay, let's say it's a $100 million mortgage. You purchase that mortgage by putting 20% down. put $20 million down, and you borrowed for $80 million. That mortgage has a 100% loss. You've lost all of your equity, and you also still owe $80 million to whoever you borrowed it from, and you have zero left in return. Okay, so you have 400 or 500% loss. Think about that. That happens often when you use or abuse leverage, and you're going to see a lot of that right now. Let's keep that in mind as we look forward to this next graph. So here we have RMBS, residential mortgage-backed securities, with delinquencies. Delinquencies at 30 days or more. Okay, these numbers are extravagant. Okay, they range from very small up until, let's take a glance, up until 21.98%. So you're talking roughly 22% of your residential home loans in RMBS bundled into mortgage-backed securities. Up to 22% of them are delinquent. If these delinquencies pass through, past 30 days, into 60, 90, and then into a full default, and you're 5 times leveraged, 100 potential for 100% losses, except for the collateral behind it. But remember, right, as unemployment spikes, as the economy dwindles, and as more people look to downsize, and as credit shrinks because banks refuse to lend or cannot lend, the prices of homes are going to go down. So the value of your collateral goes down at the same time as your defaults and delinquencies spike upwards. Right? Supply increases, demand decreases, and you have a repeat of the 2008-2009 crisis. Now, banks are supposed to be ready with more liquidity. They do have more liquidity, but, and there's a few of those, but we'll get back to those. We'll get to that in the next video. Okay? And also realize that when banks and other advanced investors purchase RMBS and CMBS, they don't use 5 times leverage. They, go for the gusto. That's where the returns are. And when things get real nasty, that's exactly where the losses are as well. Now, moving back to the CMBS, the commercial side of things, let's look at the progression of losses in 2 of the most hard-hit sectors. Okay, you have retail and lodging. Retail, common sense. If the stores are closed, then you can't shop. If you have stay-at-home orders, you shouldn't be shopping. So retail storefronts are doing very bad. You see their pictures throughout this video and the other videos where I went throughout Manhattan's prestigious and even lower-end retail corridors, and all you saw were cardboard, sheets, out-of-business signs, literally out of business, not just temporarily closed, and a lot of temporarily closed signs going out of business sales, etc. Okay, and you can see from April, May to June, the progression, how the delinquencies increase. And of course they're going to increase. No revenues means you simply can't pay your rent. But harder hit than the retail side is the lodging side, where delinquencies have increased significantly and they're extreme. And like the retail side, like many other portions of the commercial real estate sector, it's a structural change. A lot of it is not coming back. Lodging will come back in part, but it will be a while. And they got hit hard, and they continue to hit hard. Retail, you're having a seismic shift, right, into internet retail, which is why Amazon and Walmart are doing well. Even though Walmart has significant retail footprint, physical footprint, that physical footprint can be changed into warehouses or fulfillment distribution centers. Okay, Amazon has been doing that by default. Target has also been doing it. But outside of the big retailers that have the logistics, the web footprint, and the ability to store and deliver to urban areas and suburban and rural areas, you have, a debacle. Okay, lodging, a debacle. Okay, and those are the loans going to financing the actual real property. Okay, whether lodging is structural or not, I don't think that's a tough call. Retail, definite structural change. Okay, and the numbers, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the numbers. Now, given the politicization of an actual disease, a pandemic, this should be controversial. take a look at the states that opened or reopened early and their unemployment-related 30-day delinquency rates with mortgages. You can see almost every state that had opened early in the May area. Okay, it started opening the May area into June, and you can see a spike in unemployment claims, and you can also see a relative related spike in 30-day delinquencies. Okay, so we're about 2 months past the attempt to start reopening, and voila. Now, this is math, it's numbers. Okay, it's not right versus left, Republican versus Democrat, GOP versus Dem, and liberal versus conservative, and whatever else you could come up with to attempt to politicize or cast a group other than the actual science of an illness, an attempt to curb that illness by having stay-at-home orders and closing businesses, reopening before the illness has been eradicated or at least contained, and then exacerbating, right, the damage done by closing the businesses down and stay-at-home orders to begin with. Okay, the delinquencies, right, which will go from 30 days, you can see 30 days, significant spike, 60 days, which is a smoother spike, but will also rise. And the reason why it's not steep now is a simple time. It takes an extra 30 days for a 30-day delinquency to become a 60-day delinquency. And then you see that move on into the 90-day delinquency area. And then after that, you're going to see actual defaults. Okay, once you get into the 90-day in default area, damage is real, it's permanent, there's no backtracking, and you're going to have a significant problem. Now, this is going to cast a pall, right, on top of the actual damage done by people not working, by businesses not being able to operate. Okay, and it will cascade and compound. Okay, this is not a game, and this, again, makes 2008 look like child's play, even in just the beginning. Again, the numbers speak for themselves. 5 times increase, 5 times, 500% increase in commercial mortgage-backed security delinquency rates. 5 times increase, and we're just getting started. This graphic is basically a roadmap to show you what's coming in the near future. If you remember what was said earlier in the video, hardest hit was lodging, second hardest hit was retail, right, competing, and that's on the commercial side. Okay, competing with those are 1 to 4 family residential income, and then you have single family as well. Office is following up the rear, but will catch up and possibly surpass most, if not all of them, because relatively few people are going back to the office or going to work. And when they do, they're going to go with social distancing guidelines, significant less density, and you're going to have significantly less office space required since many people will be telecommuting in. So take a look at it. It shows you the components of each CMBX slice from, I think, CMBX 7, 8, 9, and 12. Okay? And there's more coming. Now, what is the natural result of all this? Well, the Fed is printing. There's no tomorrow, as we've explained. And the government is doing their fair share of monetary stimulus with much more to come. They're weakening the dollar, and that's boosting gold. But what's really boosting the price of gold is the fact that it's obvious that the Fed has very, very tangential control, if any control at all, over the economy. Let's say no control at all. So the highest correlation, the factor with the highest correlation that we know of is basically the inflation of the real interest rate, or the inflation adjusted interest rates of the Treasury. Nominal rates are going down. Real rates are going down more, okay, because the inflation adjusted Treasury rate, and that's inflation as in monetary inflation adjusted rate, is falling through the floor and is currently negative. Monetary inflation is significant because the Fed is printing, so you're making more dollars available to the same amount of consumers for those dollars. And you have a declining amount of economic activity and value to back said dollars. At the same time, you're pushing interest rates down. So interest rates go down, monetary inflation goes up, real interest rates go down even further, currently negative, driving the price of gold up. This is just the beginning. It's going to go up, 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 and up. I'm going to pause right now and see what the price of gold is currently and see if you hit an all-time nominal record. And I'm back. And gold hit a nominal high of $1,929.30 on 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell and the Pentagon was attacked and the other government buildings. Okay, sans that, I feel we're at an all-time high. Right now, gold is trading at $1,803.29 per ounce. And VE Gold, again, has proven its worth many times over by giving transferable, liquid ownership of gold, redeemable, on demand, and tradable. Yes, the Veritasium platform is working exactly as anticipated. Next video, we're going to go through banks, off-balance sheet entities, how the banks use those off-balance sheet entities to hide losses. And if you look at this video, again, you can see significant losses that will be in those off-balance sheet entities. Previous videos, we went through level 1, level 2, level 3 assets and how that accounting game is used to shift losses behind the curtain so they can't be seen. Okay, and now we're going to show how they're physically shifted or shifted from an accounting perspective off balance sheet, again, so it's hard to find them. And these are not just your little banks, but your big banks as well. The very big ones, the ones that you use often, the regional ones, the national ones, the international ones, nearly all the banks. Okay, stay tuned, lots of research to come. We're still going to do the economic contagion research that shows how the economic contagion, not the viral contagion, the pathogenic physical viral contagion, but the economic contagion jumps from country to country. It's a complex topic, put a lot of work into it. I've yet to get it out. I'm going to do a lot of this in video. For those who want in-depth access to the research, buy a couple of ounces of gold. I'll give you my personal cell phone number. Okay, you can reach me in person. Let's make the amount of gold you have to buy to be determined. Okay, but contact me.